Everybody, welcome to the show. The legend, Mr. Jason Otter, man. I don't know if you guys know who this is, Otter Basketball, but Jason Otter has been doing this craft that we all love, teaching hoops, helping young people get better at the greatest game in the world. He's been doing it for decades, and we are pleased to have him on the show. Jason, thanks for coming on.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
Yeah, so and I'm excited to get my whole crew with me. We got JB back on the podcast. It's been a while, been doing some one-on-ones, but we're gonna attack this as a family and have a really good conversation that we hope helps parents, coaches, and athletes navigate the world of youth sports with a mentality that transcends youth sports. That's why we're here. So why don't you start off? Just tell us your story, man. And if you could, please do it from a position of people that don't know you. I know you're pretty well known in the hoop world, but tell people about going from playing to coaching to training and what you're doing now.
Okay. Yeah. First of all, I feel old looking at you two. So, but no, started off, obviously, high school basketball. And, I grew up in Texas and we moved to Michigan and I want to say eighth grade. And then I played my high school there and it went pretty well. And I went on played at Austin P for a year. And then I actually transferred to Milligan College. We had a coaching change and I transferred to Milligan College in Johnson City, Tennessee. So that was a really good experience for me. And then from there, I went on and I played in Australia. So I want to say when that all kind of started winding down as a player in '95, I came back and I was still going to play. And we were going to play in the CBA at the time. And I broke my, the Australian league, that'd be the NBL one now, is in the summertime. So I'd gotten off the plane and I was getting ready and I was going to play that year. And I broke my foot playing pickup in a pickup game. And I didn't have anything to do. I wasn't going to play that season. I wasn't career ending or anything like that, like people try to make things out to be. But I wasn't going to play that season. And I took a substitute teaching job at an inner city school. And I was there just teaching phys ed. That was my background is education. I have my first degree was in health and PE, then special education, and then psychology, and then I've got my master's in ed leadership. But I was subbing, and somebody asked me to work with their child, and I started working with her. And I honestly, I did not want to be a basketball trainer. There was no such thing as basketball training back then, to be honest with you. There was no trainers. So it was just me working with the kid, and she went on and I think she got second for Miss Basketball a few years later. And then I picked up another kid along the way, and he was in Saginaw as well. And it was Jason Richardson, and he won Mr. Basketball, and we, continued to work with him. And I want to say all of a sudden I had like 12 kids, and I want to say our first 10 went Division I, 10 out of 12. So, but I didn't really, again, training was not my thing. So, and it wasn't a thing. I was just working with kids, and then I was coaching. I was a freshman coach at Arthur High School. I was still really young, probably 25 or something. And Jason Richardson was playing for that program. So it's kind of why I took the job, because I was kind of involved with him. And then I took a varsity girls position. And so I coached at the varsity level, and it was a really bad team when we took it. I think they were 1-19. I think 2 years later we were like 19-1. And you could talk about that whole thing from a coaching standpoint and kind of go through what we did there. But, and then from there, I was actually going back to take the head job at a boys' school at another school, and it kind of fell through. And I was like, I think I was thinking about starting this basketball camp thing, because I've been sending my kids to a camp that I wasn't pleased with. So we started Point Guard Elite Camp, and it just took off. I mean, it just, the first year I think we ran. The first one I ran, it was kids that I was training. So it was like 20 some out of the 30 kids went Division I. And then from there, the next year people had heard about it, and I was running like 3 in the state of Michigan. Then I was running 1 in Ohio. Then I was running 1 in Wisconsin. And then that kind of just turned into where we've been running camps for 25 years around the country. And then I I think I did like, in the last 25 years, we did like 25 instructional videos, and, with Hoops King and different, well, back then they were VHSs, so quite a long time ago. But it just kind of just happened. It wasn't a business plan. I'm not a businessman. I never really went into it for that. It was just one day at a time, kind of like we tell our kids, just don't worry about tomorrow. Just focus on being the best version of yourself you can be every day, and it'll happen for you. But a lot of them get caught up into, who's recruiting them, and it wasn't even intentional. And, I think you find the best out of yourself, and hopefully my kids have found the best out of themselves. Really, when you start trying to help other people, good things happen. So that was a big part of it, but it just kind of evolved, honestly.
Well, I think it's so cool, and I think that we're gonna spend most of our time talking about training because I just think that's where we can get the most help
Mhm.
from a guest of your caliber. But I do want to talk about your playing career a little bit because you mentioned the word transfer, which is a hot word now. I mean, it's happening, at alarming rates. So, talk to me a little bit about that. How you view it, that decision then in your life compared to how it's being decided upon now.
Yeah. Looking back, I mean, I don't regret anything. So I would never say that, I regret transferring. I didn't really get released from the school I was at. So it was kind of hard. So then I had to go NAI because I didn't have that release, and I needed, I didn't want to sit out. So I could go right to NAI and play at that time. So that was kind of what happened to me. But I mean, me personally, I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, it's hard. Everyone's got their own situation, but I think kids are obviously jumping ship way too quick, and that's a big part of the problem. And that's a big part of the thing. Like when we get into our training, we talk a lot about self accountability, holding yourself accountable, and a lot of kids are not being. I'm not saying they're not being taught that; they're probably hearing it, but I mean, we got to be able to hold them accountable, as parents and as coaches and as teachers, and that way, maybe they would be so quick to jump ship, but I mean, there's so many. I know it's a hot topic, but if you really want to get into it, you got to talk about NIL, because then you're talking about kids leaving for more money, which that's not what it was supposed to be. I was just talking to a Division I coach today about how it really wasn't supposed to be a recruiting tool. That's not what this was for. But now it's turned into a recruiting tool, and people are being open about the packages that they're getting to go somewhere. So it went from getting some brand recognition to a recruiting tool, and I mean that's not what it was intended for. So that's going to just increase the problem even more. So, but I mean that's getting into some that you could do a whole podcast on that mess.
Well,
Um,
I think
yeah,
as a college athletic director, I know we're not playing with the big boys at the D1 level, but I think what happens is, we're all trying to emulate what's happening at the top. So NAIE players and Division III players and AAU players and high school players are still approaching their career with the same mentality that they see in free agency and the same mentality that they see at the top of the sport. And I think that's where the danger is. I can see how an NBA player should be able to have some sway in where he plays. But when you get that down to a 14-year-old, it becomes dangerous because then they lose the power of accountability.
yeah. Well, you're going to have states, letting NIL go too now, and that's going to even change it even more. So, I mean, I think one of the first things we talk about is um, work ethic with our system, and how that's passion driven. You're going to work harder at something you love, and that's where you start to teach life lessons. Well, I mean, you're dealing with passion, and we're taking it out. You look back when you played basketball, and when was your most fun, most enjoyable experiences? Maybe middle school, high school, before a lot of that pressure was involved like that. Now you're talking, you got girls that are in 8th grade and they're talking about making $1 million now, which in a girl sport it's a little different because I mean, obviously there hasn't been that market for them. So I kind of, I kind of do like it a little bit in the girls game because
Yeah,
they haven't got recognized. But saying that, I mean, it's really making it very hard. I mean, it's making it very hard for colleges for recruiting. I mean, you got Division I coaches out there they're having to recruit their team every single year. So how can they hold someone accountable because they'll just jump in the portal and go to the next deal? And I mean, that's the problem. You can't really coach kids tough. I hear coaches, I mean, they're, they're, I think we should have always been told our kids we care about them, we love them. But I mean, at this point, it's not. Is it real all the time? They're saying they love them, and it's basically saying, hey, "I'm going to yell at you. Please don't jump in the portal." That's their. But I love you. We're going to coach you hard. I mean, they're scared. They'll hurt some kids' feelings, and everyone's gotten really sensitive, and they're quick to jump. I don't know. But I mean, there's kids out there that need the money, and those come from desperate situations, and it's a double-edged sword. Yeah, you know, I it's hard. I'm not a fan of it though, and I definitely am not a fan of it at the high school level. Um, so so
I think when we get into unpacking what you're doing, we'll find other moments to come back to this to talk about what we can do at the training level to sort of eliminate some of this, or at least make it have kids grow up with that sense of accountability. So I want to do that. But before we do that, again, I just like to really delve into who you are and your journey, because I think it tells a lot. Overseas, I'm always interested in that decision, right? Because that's a decision. You used the word regret before. I don't regret it, but I didn't go. I had an opportunity to go and I didn't go. So every now and then I might think, what if? So talk to that player who is good enough to play over there. What's it like to make that decision? What was it like for you?
Well, I mean, the best place to play is Australia. So if I can't really speak to Europe. I don't think I would have probably enjoyed that as much. Some people might love that, like that even more. But they spoke my language, and they're great people. I still do a lot of work in Australia. If I had to live anywhere else, I would be in Australia. A lot of great friends there. So Australia was a great experience that way. And I mean, my continued visits to Australia are just, I mean, my best friend is Australian. So, I mean, I just love that place. But it's different. I mean, you're alone, and that's really hard for people to deal with. Um, I, it's not like playing high school or college or anything else, because it's a little bit more isolated. But I mean, a lot of the kids that we've had that went to Europe, I mean, you talk about really being isolated, not being able to communicate really truly with your teammates, and having interpreters and things like that. That's a different ball game. So, I mean, I enjoyed it. It isn't something that I probably would have wanted to keep doing. And again, I wanted to do it, so I did it. And I mean, again, I came back here looking to play. At the time, it'd be the CBA, and I probably would have been a lot. I enjoyed that a little bit more, even though you barely made anything in the CBA back then.
Mhm.
So
I did a podcast once with a friend of mine, Nosa, and he has an entire program about helping athletes with the transition once they realize their playing career is over. Just because that's just a tough time for us. To be like, I've been a hooper my whole life. Now what am I? So he's got programming for that. So give me that. Talk to me about that. Once it was like, okay, I'm back from overseas. I'm not going to play anymore. You substitute teaching. Was there an identity thing going on there? Was that transition smooth for you?
well, I mean, I think, well, I stayed in the game, right? So that's what made it a little bit better for me. Because I think the transition is, can you take what you've learned in basketball and take it and put it in every part of your life?
Hey.
And like, I was really psycho about working out as a kid. Like, our kids that we have in our program are, that's one of the things our kids are kind of known for, is the kind of time they put in. So you're trying to figure out, like, what am I going to do? Well, I just kept working out. I was like working out all the time still and doing everything, but then I was coaching and training, and then that'd be training those. I wasn't trying to make money, so I'd finish school, and I'd try to keep my groups as small as I could, because I didn't care about that, and I'd have groups of two, and I'd just go through every workout with them. I didn't know I mean, I was just taking them through the drills that I did, and I happened to have really good athletes, so we had a lot of success. But I stayed in it, so it wasn't as much of a factor for me. But I've seen people who have really struggled with it, who came back, and who are a lot better pros than I ever was, and that played 12, 14 years, and they just don't know what to do. I mean, they're just like out there and struggling big time. Um, it I see a lot of people who stay in it forever, and they come back and they don't really have anything. Because if it depends on what level you're playing at. There's not everyone over there is playing at a super high level. So if you're not playing at the highest level, like in Australia, there's an NBL league where those guys are making lots and lots of money. And then if you're looking at like the NBL one, they're just making like out 30, 40. Well, I guess that'd be 40, 50 nowadays, but
Yeah.
not very much money. So if you're playing at that high level, it's different. But those that play at that lower level forever and come back, and then they don't know what to do. I mean, it's a hard transfer to take everything that you've learned in basketball and put it back into life, into your life, if you're not comfortable with that or haven't been doing that. But I mean, at the same time, I stayed in basketball, so I didn't really miss it as much as I thought I would. And then, we had I'm in Saginaw, so I played in the Flint Pro Am, and I played in the Pontiac Pro Am, and I played in the St. Cecilia League, which were all really good. I mean, that's a really good hot basketball area down there. So I was able to kind of stick around with it in the summertime for some time. And then when you're working out, like, for example, Richardson, we'd still work out, and I was still playing a little bit. So we'd play one-on-one after our workouts forever. But it's funny to even think about that now, because now I work a kid out and I can barely walk. So
divide for me the thought behind coaching versus training. I've done both, and I actually ended up probably leaning a little bit more towards coaching. I just liked the competition with the other coach. I like that chess match game. I still love training, but why did you go so heavy down the training road?
Well, that's a tough one, because I loved coaching. I don't always like who that was one of my weaknesses is I'm super competitive. So that's kind of a weakness when you take it too far. So that was something that, you have to learn how to control as a coach. And it took me, like, I want to say my first year coaching, I think I got kicked out of 3 games. So, and we were 500. And then the second year I think we were 19-1. I think I just sat on the bench and sat there and didn't say a word, because I got them where I wanted them, but as a trainer, what I was always looking for was like, example, one of my early kids was this kid named Jordan McCabe, and he was, Vitel said it when he was 11. He was the most skilled 11-year-old ever, and he was on ESPN and all these NBA Today. You're always looking for those kids. I was looking for those kind of kids, and when you're coaching, you don't have those kind of kids. So you maybe get one kid like that every 30 years. Well, so that I don't really train either. I mean, that's kind of the misconception about me, that I'm a trainer. I don't train individual players. That's not what I do. I did that with that early group in Saginaw, but I never trained again. What I do is we run camps around the country, and we teach kids how to teach themselves. So I teach them, like, how to approach their workouts. You can spend a lot more time working on your game by yourself than you can with an hour a day with a trainer. So I'm trying to teach kids how to work out, what to do. And that way they have to hold themselves accountable. So, I mean, that's the big gap that I think kids are missing. And then also the creativity piece, like, they're so used to everything being lined up for them in their workouts. And I encourage them, like, yeah, I'm going to show you, like, these things need to be done in your workout foundationally. And I need these things done here, but I need you to do this and this and this. And that, so, like, one of our homework assignments is kids have to develop their own workout. So when they come to our camp, they go through the stuff. I take them through all these breakdown checkpoint progression drills. But one of their homework assignments that night is, like, you have to develop your own workout, because I need you thinking like that, because you ultimately are the best trainer you'll ever have. So, I mean, that's how my approach. So when people say I'm a trainer, honestly, I'm really not. I don't do very many one-on-ones. I do a few for, like, certain clients, but it's not like something I do all the time. I mean, the last person I really trained individually would be Jason Richardson. And then the 2 boys that I use in my virtual training, academy, but that's it. I haven't trained anyone outside of that.
Well, let's talk about that. I want to talk about Jason Richardson, but first, I want everyone who's listening to write down what he just said. I hope, because he's giving you something free. If you're a trainer, having kids create their own workout, I think is a phenomenal piece of advice. So appreciate that. But okay, so Jason Richardson, right? So I've worked with other trainers. I'm good friends with a couple of the guys that do some NBA training, and basically, once you get a pro, like, business is gone. Like, you're good. Like, people know you trained a pro and you're good. Was that your experience? But I'm listening to you now, and you're kind of like, humble about it. Or was it like, hey, I knew Jason was going to be a pro, or are you saying Jason became a pro because he worked with you? Where do you stand with that whole relationship?
Well, I mean, so Jay's uncle brought him in. I think he was in 9th grade or something, and I walked over to him in 15 minutes in the workout and said, if he just keeps doing the stuff I'm having him do, he's going to play in the NBA. So you could tell right away. I mean, once you get, I don't market like that. So I don't market. I've worked with this pro, because I could, I mean, I did the skill stuff at the NBA Top 100 for years. a lot of these guys touch a guy one time and they act like they trained them, they videotape it. To me, it's a joke. So I don't market any of that. To me, the only way that we market is kids I've had with me from, well, honestly anymore, you're talking third, fourth grade, like the McCabe kid or all these other guys, or girls too. But like Allie Zabel, she's on USA team right now, and she's on the 18 under. We've had her since I think fifth or fourth grade or something, and she's going to UConn. We don't market that though. What we market is our developmental system and having them develop themselves. And like, I don't like videotape me working with an NBA player. It's actually, so I was a little delusional. Okay. So Jay was like my second guy and he had all that success. And I'm like, oh, I can make everybody like that. Well, you really can't. I mean, Jason's 6'5" with a 40-inch vertical. Someone told me he hit his head on the other day and he's 40 years old. So when you're looking at that, I mean, he had a lot of special gifts. So what we really do is teach kids how to have success against the Jason Richardsons, the average kid. And I mean, like, honestly, the Jordan McCabe story is a lot more of a success story for me. Not that Jason's not special. And I haven't talked to Jay in a long time, but I mean, I love him. He was awesome. I worked with him all the way through the NBA. But with like Jordan McCabe starting in third grade, and he's a 5'10" kid that I don't know if he ever dunked. And you're looking at how he developed, and became Mr. Basketball in Wisconsin over Halliburton and Tyler Hero, and then went on and started at West Virginia his first couple of years and had that, that right there is like really successful because you're talking about an average dude. I mean, I think he's 5'10". I think he's 2 inches smaller than me. So to have that, I mean, everything's technically got to be perfect. With Jay, not that he wasn't super skilled or technical, and he really improved his skill all the way through. But, when you're looking at that kind of kid, every little detail matters. So that's kind of how we came up with a lot of the stuff that we do now. So it's really built off of efficiency. And what we do is strip kids down to the foundation and build them up. And I got it's a checkpoint progression system. So it just kind of builds up. And most kids don't want to do it. So if you're already like a super athlete or everyone's telling you how good you are, probably not going to do very well with me because I'm not going to tell you how good you are. I'm going to break you down and build you back up and try to take all the flaws out of your. It starts with movement mechanics. All right, your movement mechanics, and then it turns into positioning and how to make the game easy and how to slow the game down. But it first starts with basically how you move, how you load, that kind of stuff. So
absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to jump in. I know one of the things they're kind of seeing out on your socials is the concept of extreme concepts. So I just wanted to dive into that and kind of where we use extreme is the AGB mentality comes from, the Mamba mentality. And in a lot of ways, he took the extreme approach to basketball. It got him to where it did. But that's not for everyone. So how do you use the word extreme with extreme concepts?
Well, I mean, first of all, I mean, you hear about them always load management and not work, make sure you're not overworking. Again, that's garbage to me. The first thing, my personal approach has always been nobody's going to outwork me. So we're going to outwork everyone in the country. So when I was a kid, I tried to work 10 to 12 hours a day, which is crazy, but I did it. And then like in the summertime, for example, if you look at my schedule, we book every single day. Like I don't want to take a day off. And even the 4th of July, they would fly me to Australia. I'd fly there. I'd run my camps in Australia and I'd fly back, get off the plane and run a camp wherever I flew back into that day. So I didn't want any days off. So, I mean, maybe that's extreme. I don't know. That camp goes from 9 to 9, but so 9 in the morning to 9 o'clock at night. I had one of my buddies who was a 15-year pro working it for me this year. And he's like, this is crazy, but that's the first piece is, it's a 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. camp. And it's it's just work the entire time. I don't do games. I don't do any of that. They do. So extreme concepts comes from what we do when we teach, at our point guard elite camp. And we can go through that in a second. But what we do is we try to implement those concepts into simulation, or basically if I say gameplay, I mean a transition and back, down and back. And then we stop it, freeze it, move it, here, this. And, I put them in these positions where I've got to see a lot of the stuff that we're working on. They play enough games in America, honestly. Our kids are playing all the time. And I'm having to break the bad habits that they're developing in the games. But little things like that used to be taught all the time that I never used to have to deal with, like just being shot ready or being in a defensive, an athletic stance on defense all the time and getting it. I mean, there's so much to talk about. I mean, honestly, we do all this. We call it Euro. So we do this Euro set where it's continually, ball screens into driving kick action and trying to get 2 or 3 driving kicks and, catching and moving the ball. But if I was coaching today, I might, after what I've been seeing defensively, when we try to teach defense so we can actually work on offense at the camp, heck, I might go back to a lot of off the ball action. I think that's probably going to come back in the States because everyone's just guarding the ball and kids don't understand how to defend backside. So I think you're going to see that coming back. But I mean, the extreme part, I guess, would be that, we're trying to use those concepts and we're going to work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every single night. We're going to be on the floor the entire time. I think we give them 30-minute lunches, 30-minute dinner, and we're just on the court. Sit there and lecture in the classroom or nothing.
How is that doing? Like, I'm so curious to know how that's doing from a marketing standpoint, from a success standpoint, because it seems to be in some ways counter to what you hear a lot now, which is, like you said, the load management piece and the mental health piece and the balance piece. And we are not ever going to be speaking negatively about those things. I do think that those things are important sometimes, but I'm going to ask the question to you like this. Well, I do want you to tell me how it's doing, but here's my question. You mentioned Jordan McKay is 5'10". So to all of the short guards out there, to all the people that didn't win the genetic lottery, right? Can you work your way up the basketball culture?
Yeah.
Period.
Well, I mean, okay, he's done pretty well. I think he just is the youngest assistant coach in Big 12 history or something. He just got that job at West Virginia. But absolutely. I mean, so, the one thing I always tell kids is like, you're going to have to work for it. I mean, you didn't win the lotto. So, kids today want stuff quick, and that's not basketball. That's, basketball to me is old school. So you're going to have to want to put in the extra time. And it's not just the physical work, it's the mental work. So it's the attention to detail. I always tell kids, if you walk out of a workout and you're like, man, that wasn't that tough, you didn't do it right. And again, people get caught up in the physical piece. And when you're talking about playing above your athletic set, it's not going to be the physical piece that beats them. It's going to be the mental piece. So it's your attention to detail. It's, you just broke your school's 3-point record, but you come back in the gym that day and do A through D and focus on hitting 1 o'clock every single time. Those kind of things. And I mean, it's doable, but kids really have to be focused. I mean, they basically got to be technicians. And then what they have to be able to do when they step on the court is understand, because usually when you get a kid that's a technician like that, who's going to buy into all my breakdown checkpoint progressions and movement concepts, and, because we basically break down every piece of it for you and teach you how to replicate it. Once we get them to do that, and if they're perfectionists about it, oftentimes what happens is they step in the game and they expect to be a perfectionist, and basketball is not a perfect game. So they got to be able to flip the switch mentally and understand, I'm not going to play perfect. Okay. I'm going to try to practice and do things as perfect as possible. When I get in the game, I'm going to turn loose, and all the stuff that I'm working on is going to transpire. So, I mean, that's it. But I mean, how's that Extreme Concepts going? Really well. I mean, we only market that so that's basically to our kids who have done multiple things with us. So, we only take 50 kids in there, and we have 50 every year. And that's where you look at we've got several, McCabe's, or so Allie's the bell right now. I think she's done that camp twice. This year she was playing for USA Basketball. She's the, I mean, they all do it. I mean, I think load management, I mean, the NBA does it, right? So it is what it is. But I mean, when I look at some of the stuff, like when you look at maybe John Stockton or someone who played, or Karl Malone, or, Michael Jordan, or all those old school guys who didn't necessarily sit those things out and played long careers. There's a way to do it. You just have to be smart about it and understand your body. So I'm not saying that kids shouldn't sit out, or I'm not saying to neglect, the mental piece about it. But, I think sometimes we're giving kids a bailout too, when times, when stuff does get tough, I mean, fighting through it does make you mentally tougher. I mean, period. So, I mean, that's the piece. To me, it'd be a lot easier to play in today's game in a lot of ways when you look at that, because I mean, you had to be willing to take the hits, you know, in the old game, and you couldn't sit out there and dance and get in rhythm. And you know, when you were injured, you had to step back in and play. So if you bring that mentality into this game, it definitely is a game changer. So you're trying to create that type of mentality, and there's things we do to do it, but.
Love it.
Okay. So talking about mentality, going right into it, AGB mentality, first step of that mentality is establishing care. Two-way street, both ends. We were talking a little bit before we jumped on. Why is care so important to what you do?
Well, I get after kids. I mean, people know it. So, I mean, if you've been around our stuff very much, I get after them. Usually not kids when they're new in the system. So, again, when I say system, that means they're at camps, they're doing virtual training, whatever. I see them 3 or 4 times a year, maybe 6, you know. And when they're new, I don't really. So we have a band system, so I know their experience level when they're in there. So I don't jump after a kid that's maybe a white band. But if you're a black band, and that means you've been to multiple things, and I have a relationship with you, I'm liable to get after you pretty hard. But again, the key word being relationship, and I think that's where a lot of coaches are kind of making mistakes. And coaching's hard. I love coaching. It's a hard profession. So I don't want to say coaches make mistakes, but the first thing is your kids have to know your level, because in order to be successful, you've got to develop a family type atmosphere. Whether it's working with kids the way I do or coaching them, I was able to do that in both settings. So the only time I would get after a kid that maybe I didn't have as good a relationship, it'd be for outright disrespect. Like, you know, if I'm talking to you and you're not making eye contact, that I'm liable to get mad at you for something like that. If we're not super close, or, you know, or throwing your hands up. I can't stand any kind of things like that. Now, me getting after you for other things, you know, as I develop a relationship with you, that works out fine for me every single time. I've never really had any problems with that, but my kids all know I care about them. I mean, it's pretty clear in what we do and how we handle it. So, I mean, I think that's huge. And it does work both ways. I mean, a lot of times kids, you know, struggle with their relationships with their coaches. And I'm like, well, have you talked to coach? Have you met with them? And they're scared to talk to them. So, I mean, but coaches have to generate that. And you have to put people in your players in positions of leadership. And that was one of my big things that we always did, you know, is we had a lot of captain-led stuff. And we still do that in our system. We kind of have a mentoring program. So, like, if you look at, we talked about McCabe. McCabe's mentor was Dean Danos. So Dean Danos is another 5'10" kid that played at Northern Kentucky who's a doctor right now. So a lot of times he would go to Dean and talk to him about stuff because he might not want to talk to me about it, but I would still hear about it through Dean. So we always had that inside our camp program as well with our really kids who are in the program. And I did that when I was a coach as well. So.
Love that.
What's your approach to anyone who isn't up to that caliber? If someone comes to you and says, "Hey, you know, my kid's really great. They want to work with you," and then you get them in, you know, one of your camps, and you can tell that they just don't have it. They don't have the work ethic that it takes to be successful. Is that a situation where you're going to keep working with them and push them to get to that level, or are you going to be honest with the parents and say, "Hey, this may not be the right fit"?
Well, I mean, again, to me, it's not about skill set. It's about passion. So if the kid has the passion, I believe anything's possible. I mean, we've had walk-ons go on and become All-Americans. So we've had a lot of success with kids who love the game and were passionate. But if they're not passionate about it, I'm straight up with people like, yeah, they don't. So, I mean, for example, I've got a kid right now. I had 2 Australians, and I did individually train them. One is Brody Nunn. I think he set the 3-point record in the juniors down there percentage-wise. And the other one's Bailey Nunn. So one's at Seattle right now, and the other one's going to Sacramento State. They're both D1 kids. One's 6 foot, one's 5'10". I remember their dad, who is probably one of my best friends in the world right now. We're really close now, but when he first started bringing to him, I worked with him one time, and I don't do individual training. It's really costly, first of all, and I just tell people just send them to camp. They'll get just as much in camp if they'll do it on their own. but he was coming from Australia. So I'm like, hey, I'll do it. I'll do it. So I did it with him. We brought him back, and I basically told him, I said, if they don't go home and fix this stuff, I don't want to work with them no more. It doesn't matter, because they have to do this stuff on their own. They have to work on this. And I'm like, and I never do this, but I'm like turning the kid, moving his head, opening up his chest, getting his stance, putting his knees inside his ankles. I'm holding him. And I'm like, and I told the kids, I'm like, if I have to do this with you again, we're done. Like, we're done. We're not going to do this. So, yeah, I guess I'm pretty honest with them. You know, if they got to do the work at home, if they're not, it's a waste. And again, I don't really, I've done well with this whole thing. So it's really not, I mean, I think I did well because it was never about the money. So, I mean, that was a big part of it. So I just was honest with people all the time. And then that's how I ran it. It wasn't a business.
Love that. So creating time for relationships to form, something we talk about a lot. You mentioned the mentoring program. You also did it while you're coaching, but also in your camps. How, other than the mentoring way, do you make sure that there's time for that relationship to happen? Because a lot of times there's that the nervousness to take away of some practice time or some training time to have some relationship time. How do you navigate that when time is such, an important resource for us?
Well, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. We have to make sure we talk to people. I mean,
we're too busy, coach. There's 2 hours. I don't have time. I can't talk to every player.
A lot of time opens up when people put their phones down. A lot of time opens up when people put their video games down. So like, I don't do phones. I don't do video games. I don't do any of that. So as a coach, what we did is we had a preseason, like a pre-practice meeting. Like, I always had pre-practice meeting, and it was usually captain driven. And then we'd go through our practice plan, talk about our key points of emphasis. And then at the end of practice, and this is going to sound kind of like y'all are going to think I'm from California or something, but we hold hands and we would tell the person next to us one good thing they did and one negative and one bad thing they did. So,
I'm gonna hype that up. I love that.
That's a California thing, I guess. But it did make a difference, and it opened up the door to get kids talking, because that's the problem. To me, it's never been the time. It's sometimes getting kids to open up, and but as a coach, we did everything. I mean, again, people thought it was a little extreme. I made my kids eat lunch together every single day. Game days, they had to eat with me. They all had to dress the same. They all had to dress exactly the same in practice. They had to wear the same socks. If one girl wanted to braid her hair funny, they all had to braid their hair funny. I mean, I was just psycho like that. And I mean, I don't know if I could get away with it anymore, but it worked really well. And I mean, it's the same way with what we do at our camps. Like, I don't want to say too much. I don't like to tell people everything we do, but I mean, like, example, like, I don't give kids a shirt for one day. We give a shirt for every single day. Everyone has to look the same, have their shirts tucked in. I mean, I guess it's considered old school, but to me, it's just normal, like discipline. But, there's a lot of stuff like that. But I mean, all the kids are involved in our stuff, text me. That's the one good thing about the phones, is they can get a hold of you that way, and they can keep in contact. And they are. The problem with people, like parents behind emails and text, as a coach, I haven't had to deal with any of this as a business person, but as a coach, people are too easily say things they don't normally even mean or would say behind that. But players sometimes will say things that they wouldn't either, but it's stuff that you need to know. So, I mean, that's been really good too, with our kids that way. But, I was an inner city school teacher, so you have to be able to develop relationships with kids. So, or you're not going to have any success. And to survive in a real rough area like I did, the first thing you do to kids when they come in is fist bump them. Hey, what's up? You all right? Things good? It's normal for me. So that's not a problem. Now, when we get on the court, it's business. And, I'm not their friend. I'm their coach or their teacher or whatever. I'm never their friend. I mean, you still have to call me Coach Otter. I mean, I'm not that kind of coach. I know there is people that have success like that, so I don't fault it. It's just not my style.
I would say, just to put on an AD hat for a second, when I'm looking to hire coaches, I'm not looking for a particular type of coach. I'm looking for the coach that's most in line with his own authenticity. Like I want you to be who you are, because I know that's where you're going to be the most comfortable to make the most impact. And I think that there are some people who just naturally make the most impact by being that sort of old school character. Like you, like I bet your kids find peace in knowing what to expect from you.
Yeah.
That's the key. Whereas if you're drill sergeant one day and then everything's fine the next day, you can come in here any way you want. There's no peace there. There's no consistency. You know.
Structure and order on our side, but I mean with love, and I mean that's the piece. I mean, and again, that's you learn it real quick as a teacher, and that's so. Again, people think I'm a trainer, not a trainer, but I get calls all the time by people in wanting to be trainers. What's the key? And I say, well, what are you? Are you a teacher? That's the first thing I say. Well, are you a certified teacher? And they're like, no, I want to be a really good trainer. I want to do what you've done. I said, well, the first thing I would do if you want to be a great trainer is I would go back to school and become a certified special education teacher.
Wow.
And then the
Then
basketball.
they hang up the phone.
Yeah, they don't want that because they don't, that's not the easy route, but that's the real route. Because I taught special education for 15 years, and that's where I developed the system. Like when I was working with those early players, I was just teaching them what I did. We're gonna do these drills, do this, do that. But then in order to really help kids, I mean, you're trying to figure out how to have every kid's different. So you have to break things down and piece them and build them up. And that's how you teach in special education. If you don't do that, you're not going to have any luck with a kid with a disability. So what I call it is continuity of principle application. Everything has to fly together with a lot of continuity for it to make sense. And you get really good at teaching that way. So that's what I did in basketball, is I just used a lot of the things that I learned working with children with disabilities, and I put it into teaching the game. And that's how, if you go back and you go to the site, Otter Basketball or whatever, and you watch those videos, you'll see every kid moves identically the same. And I do it because I do it in pieces. And again, it's not a quick thing, what we do. And I don't put a lot of it out there for people to see because, I mean, I honestly just keep it for Otter kids. But, it is what that is. That's the difference. Like, I'm not trying to teach you like some Steph Curry or Kyrie Irving thing. That's not what we're doing. And if you see some of our kids, like obviously the McCabe or any of them you pick, you see a lot of that, but that's not how we did it. We did it by, piece by piece, and through them holding themselves accountable with checkpoints and progressions, and them understanding the concepts, and then, then it actually falls together. If I'm holding them accountable or I'm trying to explain the concepts, but they don't truly understand how they work and how to implement them, if they can't answer our questions that we drill them with when they're with us, then they're not able to do it.
I want to talk about girls and guys, and I want to talk about different ages. But before I do that, I just don't like to rush myself, because you just said something I want to give you a chance to elaborate on. So kind of like go ahead and talk to those trainers. Like not I love the part about this special ed. That's a great nugget. But like let me just say really quick, this is why you stand out to me, right? I'm scrolling, the algorithm knows who I am. The algorithm feeds me lots of basketball. Like they know who I am. So if I'm scrolling on any Instagram, TikTok, social, Facebook, whatever, I get tons of trainers. You stand out. I'm telling you stand out, because it's, most people are showing you how to do something in a bag and, do this mix, and they don't know why they're doing it. It's just do this combination and make it look good. I'll put some music to it and we're gone. You are teaching how and why and to apply. And it seems to me like you're doing it intentional. So talk to the training community and tell them why your brand is what it is.
Well, I'm not a trainer, but I'm not so I don't do gimmicks, first of all. And some gimmicks work for some people. And if you're working with high level athletes, you're lucky, you're probably going to have more success with that. But again, I'm trying to find those average kids that have a passion and help them have their dreams come true. So if I'm talking to trainers right now, I mean, I guess the big thing I'm saying is our piece is going to come down to finding kids that are super passionate about the game, and telling them this is a 10-year process, and you're going to give me 2.5 hours a day of your day. And that's not counting all the other stuff I'm going to ask you to do, and how I'm going to ask you to live your life in a little more disciplined manner. So, I mean, that's the first piece. But one of the biggest things, I mean, when you talk about what you're seeing from those trainers is, I mean, one of the first things I tell kids is the biggest mistake you're making is you're working on a move that you may do once a game or once every 3 games instead of mastering the things that you do 500 times a game. And that's where it starts at. Good example. I have a kid and he wasn't playing AAU and he was a freshman. And obviously I had a relationship a little bit with Coach Huggins at the time at West Virginia. And I sent him a video of this kid and I said, I think he's going to be really good. I just want you to watch the video. And, I think you'll like him. Huggins offered him in a week. And because you could tell by the way that the kid moved. And it wasn't the things like people think. Like, I mean, first of all, Huggins doesn't want to see a lot of that craziness. It was how he made his cuts, how he was shot ready, how, those little things are the things that the really good ones are usually looking for. But, and again, when you watch an AAU basketball game, you got a bunch of kids trying to replicate some Instagram post. And if you look off the ball, they're all standing straight up.
Yeah.
They're not moving off the ball. They're not shot ready. They're not in defensive help side. So a lot of the stuff that I see in AAU, to me, I mean, I'm not doubting the fact that, you're seeing good athletes out there, but I'm doubting the fact that they're in position to actually make the game difficult for a guard that may be playing a little out of control. Those windows close down when you get people in position. So, I mean, I think that's it. I mean, we do not shoot video. I don't even care about Instagram or any of that, really. They put some stuff out there that they may catch me usually doing in the gym. I've always found it pretty amazing to me that these people have this time to shoot all these videos alone in the gym. I'm usually working at a camp. Now, we've done it a couple times for things, but I did it for the first time ever, like last year. And to me, I was like, I should be at a camp right now. Because that's where I actually do my work. So, yeah.
Well, it helped me find you again. I remember you from back, when you were younger and you were, doing some stuff on YouTube and things like that. And then now I've found you now and doing this elite thing. I just think it's awesome. I think more people need to do that where they're doing the why. And they would say what you're saying. I love what you're saying, that I'm not a trainer, because like you said, training gets you to do a skill if you want to be like on the Globetrotters or something, but it doesn't help you get to a college program and help it win.
No, I mean, intangible pieces are what really gets you there. And I mean, there's a lot of kids that can dribble and a lot of kids that can shoot. I mean, maybe not as consistent as a lot of the kids that we're really bringing out, because, we talk a lot about the 180 piece, and most of our kids that are really playing high level are doing that at the high school level, which is still really good, but to do it at each level, it gets more difficult. But those intangible pieces are noticeable. So if you're out there and you're being vocal, and you're moving guys or girls, and you're getting back and you're talking on defense, and you're getting touches, and all those little pieces make a difference. I mean, they really do. I mean, everyone wants to get noticed these days for the wrong thing, and they hit a shot and if one of my kids makes one of those stupid little signs, and don't get me wrong, some of my kids do it, and first of all, the NBA is entertainment, so that's the missing piece. And high school basketball, and hopefully still college, is about developing relationships, learning how to make people around you better. And not that you don't do that in the NBA, but I mean, there's an entertainment piece in the NBA, which is creeping into college now with the way it's all flowing. But I mean, what makes basketball great is the relationship piece. And I hope we don't, lose that in the whole flow of this, because, there's still room for, players that were really good at that as well.
JB, I know you're passionate about the girls' game, man. So I'll let you tee that one up.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. I guess a specific direction want to go in that way, but last 2 years have had the opportunity to work with the Chaska girls basketball, shout out Chaska out in Minnesota, and was able to be their hype man, and got to take what Rick taught me from the care aspect, and bring that into the gym, and got to be the scout team player. So like actually practicing with them every day, ripping through, rebounding, and just had an amazing experience with that. And so, kind of tell us a little bit about that experience that you've had within the girls' game.
Well, I loved it. So when I coached girls, that was I mean, as a coach, that was probably my most enjoyable experience. It was just really easy to get them to buy in, and I didn't have to deal with the selfish piece as much and trying to, get them to buy into, maybe playing a little bit more together. They'd run through a wall for you and everything. But in the girls' game, we've had a whole lot of success. It just seems like it's a little bit easier for us. Like we've got, like, example, we took 3 kids. We had I didn't ever always I didn't have this young division of our camp starting in 3rd grade up until we did a trial run with McCabe, Weir, and Gerald's. Right now, Gerald's is the starting point guard at Youngstown State. I think she was runner-up for Player of the Year in West Virginia. And it was just a little easier with her. Obviously, with McCabe and Weir being 6-foot guards, I think Weir finished 2nd in the country or 3rd in three-point percentage when he was at Purdue Fort Wayne. And obviously, McCabe had his own little thing where he did really well. It was a lot more difficult with the girls, getting them to play low, which is easy for us to do in our system, has led to a lot of success. And like I talked about, the girl right now we just had that just come into UConn, who was playing for Team USA. It's just a little bit easier, That you're talking about the boys and at the level that they play above the rim. I mean, it's a lot harder for an undersized guard, especially, the way the game's trending, and these athletes are just playing a lot better on the perimeter skill wise than they have. So in the girls' game, there's still a little bit bigger of a window for us to get them through. So we've had a lot of success with that, but it always comes down to a lot of the same things. I hate to act like it's that much different, and to stereotype it all. So, us getting them to commit when they're young, to 35 minutes, an hour a day, with their foundational work, as they get older to that 2.5 hour piece. And honestly, when our kids are really, really good, they're putting in 3-4 hours a day in the summertime of that. I want to say deliberate practice work, but people don't really understand what that actually is. So they think deliberate work is holistic work. So that's probably one of the biggest differences. So, I mean, the deliberate practice piece isn't fun. And, and I can get into this whole definition of fun thing. And I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings about it, though.
Listen, man. Listen, our podcast is called AGB Podcast. If you've clicked in to listen to this, you're only here for one reason. You're not here to be entertained. You're not here to be coddled. You're here to get better. And getting better is accountability. So, hit them, man. Like I'm interested. Like our AGB mentality that we want the world to know about includes deliberate practice. We talk about it specifically, that there's a difference between the 10,000 hour rule where, you can get as much time in as you want. But if it isn't deliberate, you're wasting some of that time. So please break that down for us.
Yeah, I would say, everyone in this country goes to work every single day, but I take that back. 50% of this country goes to work every day. I don't know what the other half's doing, but you got 50% that actually go to work. All right, so you got 50% that go to work. And then how many of them are actually, masters of their skill, of their craft? Not many. So that kind of comes back into that. So the first piece is showing up and bringing your mind every single day. Like you could have a guy who sweeps the floors and he's extremely good at it. Man, he sweeps the hang out of those floors and he shows up every day on time and he works hard. That's physical labor. But then you got this girl that comes in and she figures out a way to sweep the floors just as good, but she gets it done 2 hours early and then she goes on to the next job. So that girl become president of the company. The other guy's mad at the girl saying it's not fair. You gave her that raise because of this or that. No, she got that promotion because she just was working not just physically, but mentally. So that's the first piece of work that we talk about. I mean, that like bringing your mind. And I've already alluded to that. But the deliberate practice piece is, again, everyone's worried about kids having fun. And I'm pretty clear with kids, like, we're going to redefine what fun is. Like, is your fun winning state championships? Or if you just want to have fun, go play at the YMCA. Go to the YMCA basketball camp, whatever it is, because I'm not here to do that. So in order to have the kind of fun that I'm talking about, you're talking about, breakdown checkpoint progressions, like stuff people just won't understand, so me breaking you down into your crossover step over and over and over, and talking about how your foot's straight and it should be turned in, and that foot should be laced over, and all these little details. And we'll just sit there and show a kid, this is what you do when you go home. You fall into this slot, you fall into this slot, you fall into this slot, and then eventually they route it. Okay, but you're not going to route, okay, those movement mechanics. That's in the early part, without that breakdown check. So when you're sitting there having a kid come down, and again, it just depends on the kid too. Like there's not a thing for everybody. But when you're sitting there having a kid come down and do a sham guide into a euro or something or whatever, just to have fun or whatever they're doing, that again goes against the entire piece of what we're trying to do, because I'm trying to make you as efficient as possible and eliminate all wasted action. So when you play, every movement has a purpose. It's got to be deliberate in nature. I mean, you have to move a certain way. You have to load a certain way. And I mean, it's that all the way through with what we do. So again, there's certain things we expect every day, but we don't even put kids into our 168. We have it's called explosive guard workout. It's 168 sprints 3 times a week. I don't even put them in that right away until I broke them down and built them up for at least 2 or 3 months.
So that was something I was fascinated by. And listen, please don't take this question as me trying to get into your business success, but I'm just curious. I want to know what is a virtual training? Like, how do you do that where you can get into the games of people from their living rooms and just downloading your stuff? How does that work?
Okay, so we've got a couple of different. So again, the trial run with that was McCabe. So again, we started these kids young. I think Jordan moved to Seattle probably in 5th grade. I mean, he's kind of like a son to me. So I was basically like, here, we're going to put you in this. This was before nobody had this at the time. Like, these sideline people called me and 2 other basketball guys. There wasn't a lot of trainers even at the time yet. And they said, we're doing this in weights. You want to try to do this in basketball? So I was like, sure, we'll do it in basketball. So I built these workouts up, and when they started, it wasn't. So what you're talking about, virtual training, where we first had online training, and the online training was basically a clip of each drill. Okay, so a clip of each drill, and I built these workouts up, and the kids would log in, and their workout would be there with reps, and they would do each drill, and they'd try to mimic the video. That was how it first started. When I first started it, I think I put so much content on the platform that they had to rebuild the platform. I think I put 7,000. Yeah, Christy said, yeah, that's true. It was like 7,000 minutes or 7. I mean, it was like I think it might be 10,000 minutes at this point. They had to rebuild the entire platform. I overloaded it. And that's a national thing. I mean, I shot everything, every piece, every instructional videos, me talking about basketball, everything. So I just built all these. So like, a lot of people get their online training and it's like 15 or drills or something. When you get it from me, you're talking, it's going to be probably 200 different things. Mm-hmm. And I mean, so that was overwhelming. People were like, I can't do all this. It's too much. And you had all these perfectionist kids freaking out, having panic attacks. So then I go to virtual training. Then we went to virtual training. And that basically is like, and it's got its purpose, and it's very good, especially when kids just start with us. It's basically like P90X. But again, they're like 30-minute workouts, but I think I did 150 of them. So I did like 150 30-minute workouts where it just builds through the process. And then what I recommend people usually do is go through the virtual package, and it's got shot development and everything. And now we have our strength training. I've retooled strength training over and over for different situations. But then so it's got strength training, vertical jump program. It's got that. And then you have the online that can run with it. And then so with our real serious kids, we do virtual consults, which I'm doing tomorrow for like 4 hours. I thought I was actually off, but I found out. So that's where I do this with kids, and they have clips they send me, and I match their clips up with my clips of us going through, and we kind of pick their movement mechanics apart or their shot. And then we'll go through game clips too. So that's what it entails. The strength piece, that's always, we do different ages, different levels, a lot of knee over toe based stuff. So a lot of things like that.
That's awesome. I want you, as we get to an hour, and we appreciate your time, we can kind of work to wrap this up. But as we do, I want to let Christy know that we need to do a show where we acknowledge what it means to be the wife of a basketball coach. I mean, that is content in and of itself. So shout out to her. I know she was a big part of getting you on the show. So thank you. But yeah, I appreciate your time, man. So just there's two things that we always like to end. Is one, where can we find you? Tell our people how they can go support Otter Basketball, and then I'll ask you the tough question at the very end.
Yeah. Well, you can find me at otterbasketball.com. That's probably the best way. Obviously, I think on Instagram and social media as well. So www.otterbasketball.com. Our contact number is 1-866-357-2966. Again, if your child is super passionate about basketball, we're for you. If they're just not that, I'm not for the kid who's not super passionate. I'm just being honest. I don't want to scare anybody away from the game or anything like that. But if you've got that kid that's putting, 2 hours, 2.5 hours in a day, then we're where you want to be. You can just kind of look back through the history, see the kids we developed, and you'll figure that out pretty quick.
I love that. So this one we like to kind of catch at the very end. Just one of the things we're trying to do with AGB is normalize insecurity. We don't think it's a big deal. It's everyone has it. It's like eating. If you're hungry, you eat. If you're tired, you sleep. And if you're insecure, you go work on your game, right? That's how I look at it. So when you look at where you are now in your life, Coach, what's next for you? What's your AGB, and where your insecurities in that?
Well, I was really mistaken as a kid, thinking that I controlled my script. I always thought, man, if I outwork everybody, if I do this, I can steer my stuff here or there. And where I go next, that's God's plan. I believe, and God writes my script, and I've kind of just let Him kind of guide me and take me. And honestly, I kind of gave it up to just really helping kids. So that kind of just has steered me where I go. I'll run these camps as long as God lets me, and I'll keep doing it until someone else can come in and kind of slide in and slide me out. So maybe I can relax a little bit and actually do some work on the ranch and do some stuff around the house. It's hard being gone all summer. And I was gone all year last year running a basketball academy. So that was difficult, but it's all in God's hands.
Man, that's an awesome answer, man. Awesome answer. I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on. I know you gave us a lot for our parents, coaches, and athletes to learn from today. So we'd love to have you back on. We're one of the things we want to do, Coach, is do a panel where we get a coach, a trainer who's not a trainer, and people, get them all together and let's talk about this stuff like openly. So I want to invite you back for that if you don't mind. But thank you for your time.
Man. Yeah, just no cone sliding. No cone sliding.
Deal.
It takes some of those guys so long to set up their obstacle course. I'm like, how are they working out? It takes like an hour to set up the obstacle course they're going through. Like it's a CrossFit competition or something.
It's good for the gram, Coach. It's good for the gram.
It's good for the gram. There you go.
For sure.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
Appreciate it, Coach.